Hello, this is Spellbinder with this update on S510 on the government takeover of private farms and agriculture in America under international laws. The internationalists have taken over, and I will prove this to you with this article here. I'll just read the first part and have a link to both of these articles at the bottom of this video. This is the first one. FDA says you have no right to freedom of food. The Food Safety Modernization Act is an obvious attempt to intrude on the freedoms of the U.S. citizens by restricting the food supply, which in turn will restrict access to healthy food, giving control over this basic necessity of survival to the FDA. The FDA is not interested in protecting our food or health, only in controlling it and funneling profit to the large agricultural and pharmaceutical corporations of the U.S. They are so determined to succeed in this effort that they have said in defense of their tyrannical actions that there is no fundamental right for a person to choose their foods or freedoms of contract for it. The FDA states this in response to a lawsuit filed by the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund, the FTCLDF, which is a 501c4 organization, which means that it exists to promote the social welfare of its members and community. The lawsuit was filed against the FDA for their ban on raw milk, which according to the FTCLDF is a violation of the Constitution and outside of the FDA's statutory authority. The FDA has been raiding farms selling raw milk and other dairy products with excess frequency and force, causing the operators of these farms to suffer damages to their businesses. The following is a link to articles we posted earlier this year about the FDA's raids on these small farms. The FTCLD's case against the FDA began in February 2010 and over the course of the year has been held up by motions to dismiss the case coming from the FDA and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Whether the case actually makes it to trial or not is yet to be seen, but what has been said by the FDA in their defense has already served to expose their dangerous views. Health freedoms. You thought you had the right to choose what you eat. Think again. The FDA says you don't. They claim that there is no fundamental right to choose your food or freedom to contract for it. Responding to a Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund lawsuit, the FDA clearly states that you do not have the freedom of choice in your diet. We will dictate what you will eat, what you will take into your bodies. We are your gods. We are your control masters. Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund, the FTCLDF lawsuit against Food and Drug Administration, or is the Food of Death Administration. The FTCLDF is a 501c organization, which means that it exists to promote the social welfare in its members and community. They defend their reasons for being in on sentence. Sustainable farming and direct farm-to-consumer transactions further the common good and general welfare of all Americans. Their mission statement says, in whole, the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund, being this 501c4 nonprofit organization made up of farmers and consumers joining together and pooling resources to protect the constitutional rights of the nation's family farms, to provide, process, and unprocessed farm foods directly to consumers through any legal means. Protect the constitutional rights of consumers to attain unprocessed and processed farm foods directly from family farms. Protect the nation's family farms from harassment by federal, state, and local government, interference with food production, and on-farm food processing. I will tell you this now. What they were protecting us from back in the 30s, back in the 20s, maybe even as late as the 40s and 50s, doesn't exist anymore. People that run these farms run them like a lab, just about. They're clean. They don't let the milk get contaminated. They don't let their dairy products get contaminated. They don't let their agricultural products like spinach and stuff get contaminated. They don't raise their cattle right next to their spinach farm so the waste produced by the cattle doesn't get mixed in and create salmonella. No, they are clean. It's the factory farms that do this craziness, and nothing more, and no one else. These people, the small farmers, are being screwed by the federal government. On this one, PPJ's Marty Oakley says, from this quote from them, the FDA and the Secretary of Agriculture, the S510 calls for the Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, to contract the governors of each state to determine which agency within the state will contract on behalf of the states to administer the USDA FDA federal plans for seizing control of food production and supply, handing it over to multinational corporations, and setting into motion the eradication of family and independent farms and ranches. These new businesses plans, that is, which is what the S510 is, a business plan, require contracting with state agencies, accompanied of course by bags of USDA federal bribery money called cooperative funding. That's right. The federal government, including Senator Reid, who is yet again pushing for a vote on the S510, the fake food safety bill, no, they cannot pass any enforceable law on the federal level dealing with agriculture. It is not in the enumerated powers and will exist only as non-positive code and title. Because these laws are outside the scope of the federal government, they cannot be used to criminalize what was otherwise your right to do without their interference. Non-positive code and title, in this case Title 7 of the United States Code, cannot be revised, codified, and assigned a public law number, as these corporate codes are outside the authority of the federal government. Should S510 pass, it is null and void on its face, as it never existed. But not one of your senators or representatives will tell you this. In an effort to bypass Congress and the President so that none of these illustrious individuals can be held directly accountable for this act of aggression, this selling out of America's farm and ranches, this selling off of our national security regarding food under the threat of further contamination, which these same agencies facilitated by their refusal to act in our defense as they contracted against us. The USDA and the FDA have become the most clear and present danger to the U.S., and Congress in both houses is enabling this threat. They are sliding in to the Federal Register the attempt to expand their powers and authority by claiming the presumption of authority which they were never intended to have. Every attempt is made to change the rules on the register and then claim they have new power because no one objected and rebutted their assertions. When rebuttals using law are presented on the register, which has been done, the FDA and USDA fall silent and just proceed on as if nothing happened. Of course, not one word from those senators or representatives about this. They were probably out to lunch with corporate donors. I'm going to take you to the next part of this, which is S510 can be stopped right at your state governor's door. Unless our governors give permission and designate one or more agencies inside your state to contract with the USDA, FDA, they cannot implement, enforce, or otherwise criminalize agriculture in your state, because agriculture is outside the enumerated powers of the Constitution. Your governor has to give permission to the USDA, FDA, or any of these other corporate government agencies to come into your state and set up shop. Every one of those senators preparing to vote this next week either know or should know that they have no constitutional right to dictate agricultural practices within the state. Every bill must have an enabling act, a clause which shows under what constitutional and lawful authority they write the bill. This bill has none. They know this is outside their delegated powers. Furthermore, no senator wrote this bill to begin with. It was written by corporate lobbyists and special interest groups looking to profit by constructing legislation that would arbitrarily end market competition, which would, with discrimination, unlawfully target everyone except the corporations which they have contracted and secured for them, the agricultural sector. Because of USC 7 is non-positive, they then attempt to co-opt the Commerce Clause of the Constitution, and someone must have realized this was also non-positive code and title, and now the bill is being pushed under the general welfare concept. It's all crap, every bit of it. The current condition of our food production and supply has been devastated by excessive use of pharma, herbicides, pesticides, GMO seeds, and is now rife with cloned animals being injected into the food supply. CFFO farms have devastated waterways and supplies, contaminated the land with mountains of manure so toxic from GMO chemicals and pharma that the manure is now classified as toxic waste. The inhumane treatment of the animals and poultry under these new industrialized conditions was highlighted in the recent egg recall photos and film of the horrendous conditions that the USDA FDA knew about and did nothing about, even though the corporate industrialized egg producer had been cited multiple times, which they still have done nothing about except write a warning letter. And now the Senate wants to expand the reach and scope of these dysfunctional, incompetent agencies which approve and help establish this system. By piracy, corporations have successfully infiltrated our government and our courts, even as GMO-generated foods are shown to change our DNA, to damage internal organs and make us sick. The USDA and the FDA, along with the judiciary, have forced them into population as profits, and monopolies of agricultural markets are far more important than the general health and well-being of the country. S510 is not about safety or protecting the food supply or keeping us safe from terrorists who might target our food supply, unless of course you consider all the multinational corporations waiting to carve up the agricultural pie. S510 is a direct assault on the food security of our nation, as it is subjects us to illegal and unlawful trade agreements focused on exporting whatever we do produce for profit, regardless of the vulnerable position it will leave the people of the U.S. in. Nothing in this bill sets up strategic reserves for emergency use here in the U.S., and the entire bill is centered around export and profit for corporation. Here's your free trade for ya. It's about land rights on your dinner table. It's about the land right on your dinner table. call and write your governor. Tell them to stop this madness. Stop this. Keep them accountability. We must keep them accountable for this. If 510 counts, every person that signed that bill to make it legal will be guilty as hell. And you people must stop it. Until next time, this is Spellbinder. Be good or be good at it. Good day.